Do you want to help support Beyond Forbidden and receive extra content that's not seen anywhere else? By becoming a patron, a few things you will receive are the full-length 90-minute or 120-minute podcast episode. Members will also receive a private link of the video podcast and will only be exclusive to Patreon members. In-person, face-to-face interviews with some of the most well-known, respected researchers. Behind-the-scenes footage of interviews not seen anywhere else. And that's just a few perks. So what do you have to lose? Cut out one brain-rotting, overly processed Happy Meal a month that doesn't do anything beneficial for your mind, body, and spirit, and become a Patreon for just $5.
Which, by the way, was financed by a board member of an aerospace company who builds rockets for NASA, who knows the moon missions are fake. So you got to understand, I was given $1 million by a millionaire who builds rockets for NASA, who knows the moon missions are fake, who wanted to expose it as his patriotic duty. And then as I'm producing this film, we uncovered classified footage of NASA faking part of the mission right in front of your eyes, creating a 1-foot model of the Earth, which is clearly a fake. The lights come up and you see, it's a fake Earth floating in space. The thing is dated 2 days into the flight, and we have a third track of audio of the CIA telling them how to create a fake radio delay to create this appearance that they're halfway to the moon, when in fact, they're still in Earth orbit, only about 250 miles above the Earth. So if they answered questions right away, it'd give away that there should be a radio delay. So we have the CIA telling them not to answer the question until they count off 4 seconds, to create this fake radio delay. And what a surprise, here we are 50 years later, and they still cannot leave Earth orbit. That's why the Artemis rocket has no astronauts on board, because they still can't protect the astronauts from radiation. So all that to say, not only is that in the book, all these behind the scenes things, when I found this classified footage, Michael, I had, weird X-Files espionage adventures happened. And I never talked about them during interviews like this, because I'm already trying to get people to understand something that's hard to accept, that they really did fake the moon landing. So I don't want to add that I was kidnapped and drugged by the CIA and escaped their custody, peed in a cup, took it to a lab to prove I'd been drugged by true serum, which I was. And then when I go to check in on the lab results, the lab says, we can't give them to you because we had a break-in over the weekend, and funny thing, the only thing stolen was a urine sample.
How convenient. How convenient.
Crazy stuff happening. Yeah. I mean, I was followed from church, and my car was zapped with, I don't know what you call it, electronic weapons to disable my car, and literally people following me, surrounded by corrupt cops in front of CNN when I'm about to give this classified footage to CNN, and just crazy stories, but all true. And then as I'm editing the book, I get contact from a gentleman by the name of Cyrus Eugene Akers. Now, Cyrus Eugene Akers was the MP, like you were, Michael, and he was MP, Chief of Security, the top MP at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico in 1968. And he testified on his deathbed that he eyewitnessed the filming of the fake moon landing as he stood beside President Johnson, who was there for the first of 3 days of filming. Now, Johnson gave this guy a list of 15 people, and he said, these 15 people are allowed in. You check them off. They can come in and observe. Neil Armstrong was on the list. Buzz Aldrin was on the list. Michael Collins was not, because he's not supposed to be there, right? So they didn't want him having any visual connection to the fake moon landing or the real one, right, if it happened. So they were trying to match that. There were a couple of NSA, CIA names on there, and a science fiction consultant by the name of Robert Emenegger, who is still alive. And I guess to say whether this scene looked, like it might look on the moon or whatever. And so he confesses this as he's dying, including something I did not put in the book because his son was still alive at the time, but I've mentioned it in a couple interviews. I'll mention it here. The guy also confessed he killed a coworker who was going to blab. Okay. So you don't say, oh, by the way, I murdered somebody.
Yeah.
If you really didn't murder somebody. And if you add to that, and I murdered them because he was going to squeal about the fake moon landing, which was shot at our base, you don't make that stuff up. And then his son confirms all of this. Here's a picture of my dad in uniform. Here's his MP, badge. Here, I lived right across from Cannon Air Force Base, and I can tell you all this stuff happened just like my dad said. He's not a liar. He forbid lying in the house. He beat us terribly if we ever lied. He wasn't a liar, and he certainly wouldn't make up that he murdered somebody, the day before he died.
Why would you lie on your deathbed anyways? Yeah. Why would you lie on your deathbed?
And in court, not only is an eyewitness, like if I witnessed somebody shoot somebody, my testimony that I saw them do it is enough to convict them.
But, so this is my deathbed confession, because now I'm dying of cancer. I've got cancer all over the place, and they don't know where it's coming from, and I don't know if they can stop it, but it don't look good. So I'm going to go ahead and make this video for BART SIBREL. He knows not to do anything with it until notification of my death, for which my son will respond to that. Okay, like I said, in 1968, my father was stationed at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico. We lived in Clovis, New Mexico. He was in the military police for over 20 years. And on his deathbed in 2002, we made a recording of what happened. Now, I already told you what happened to the recording. But it doesn't matter, because all the facts are there, so it doesn't matter who's telling the story or whatever. 1969, I was 14 years old. I vividly remember the Apollo 11 coming down, landing on the moon, they're walking around and all that stuff. Okay, anyway, this is the story that my dad told me on his deathbed. Project Slam Dunk was the name of this. President Johnson in 1968, okay? In Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, he said by the time he got there, that there was already 2 large hangars that were connected. There was hundreds of dump trucks that came in and dumped sand and stone, and cement powder was powdered over the top of all that to make it look like a lunar landscape. They had men that fashioned it into a lunar landscape, he said. Okay, I've never known my dad to lie, so this all took me by surprise. What's that all about? So anyway, he said that in front of the airplane hangars was pole framing with large canvas tents that was concealing the inside of the staging area. Inside the staging area, on flatbed trucks, was uncrated the lunar lander that was reassembled back inside the hangars. All of the walls were painted flat black, and the ceilings as well. He was sworn to secrecy by the NSA, and they would put him in prison for breaking that oath. When Dad saw the moon landing on TV, he cried. He said he knew that what he had witnessed on TV was exactly what they recorded in that hangar. There was no reason for them to go flying around and everything. They had detailed high-definition photos of the landing area. There was no reason for them to go flying around to a different landing area that almost exhausted their fuel, except for drama, because everything had gone so smoothly. Nothing, so it had to be something. Anyway, Dad was one of 3 guards that guarded the inside of the front entrance. There was a list of 15 people who could enter. No one else was allowed by order of President Johnson. And here is that list, and I gave it to BART SIBREL as well. And he checked out a lot of these names, and he says he can verify a lot of these people and what they do. And I come across a couple myself. Anyway, President Johnson, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, Werner von Braun, Robert Emenegger, Gene Kranz, James Webb, Joe Kerwin, Dr. Thomas Paine, Glenn Looney, Dr. Christopher Kraft, Dr. James Van Allen, General Trudeau, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Simon, and Grant Norrie. Now, the only two that I really have information on is Robert Emenegger. Apparently, he did a lot of video work and stuff for the Department of Defense. So the DoD did know him, okay? And the other one was Grant Norrie, Norray, I believe, was to the best of my dad's knowledge, was a like some FBI, CIA, NSA, who knows, something like that. Okay, President Johnson only showed up for the first day of filming. Filming lasted for 3 days, and the entire project was restored to original. In other words, the hangars were all taken apart, the sand was all removed, and so on and so forth. Okay. Dad said there was a lot of building going on at the base, so at the time, so sand and cement powder was never questioned. I can see how they could smuggle that all in within everything else that's going on. Since 2002, I have dug up, I already told you about that, the evidence for the moon landing that I have found. If you go to Google and go to Cannon Air Force Base website, they admit that President Johnson was there. The lunar lander was there. The astronauts were there. I also have verified some of the people on the list were there. I also verified there are a lot of building going on in the base, just as he had told me. And all of this was going on at the same time, on the same date. Dad told me all these things father to son. He also told me not to ever tell anyone what he had said, but he said on his deathbed that he had to tell somebody before he died because it was just too important not to tell. I sure as hell wasn't going to tell anybody. Yeah, I feared for my wife and me and my son, and I'll tell you why. Ever since I contacted Bart SIBREL, I think they may be listening to his phone once in a while, because I never had any problems until I contacted him and told him my story. Now, people broke into my house 2 times. I was visited by men with black suits, and I was told in no uncertain terms to drop this whole project, not to say any more to anybody, or me and my wife and my son could disappear. You take that pretty literally after everything that's going on. Well, so I stopped contacting Bart, and now I'm making this video that I'm going to send to Bart. Mr. SIBREL, excuse me. Bart's my brother, man. My brother in heart, my brother in Jesus, okay? Bart, being a good friend that he is, called the police for me and told them about the break-ins. The 2 detectives that came out and everything, questioned me and everything like that, I didn't give them any information at all. At the time, I thought it was a test from them guys in the black suits. I didn't say crap. So all that went away and everything. But it definitely, the 2 guys in the black suits were not the 2 detectives that came out to question me about the break-ins. But thanks, Bart. But No, I don't want any help. I just want somebody to pick up where I left off and be able to prove with the information I've given. And I'm trying to give as much as I can because I know that once I die, I'm not going to be able to be asked any questions. So that's why I tried to give you a little backstory too. But that's about all I can think of. My dad, he raised me by the book. I know he didn't lie to me. And as I started seeing more and more of what he was telling me was true, I realized my dad wasn't lying. I lifted the lid off my dad's case, and you can see that his name is Cyrus Eugene Akers. He was born on July 17th, 1933. He died on September 28th, 2002. Here's his badge, and I wanted to see if I could get as close as possible so that you can read the numbers on the bottom, which are, okay, there it is. (07596). 07596. That's my dad. And it must have been a really early picture because he's only got 2 stripes, so that was back in the 50s, I'm sure. Probably not long after I was born. And there he is. That's my father. My dad, he raised me by the book. I know he didn't lie to me. And as I started seeing more and more of what he was telling me was true, I realized my dad wasn't lying.